Sorry for that.
Nobody could rest you. Nobody could rest.
Sorry for that, ladies and gentlemen. Let me refresh the page. Bumped into a couple of copyright issues just that. But we're back. We're back. Yeah, for another hour or so. That's another 55 minutes.
Everybody keep on searching for miraculous blessing. Nobody got you. If you know yourself, you go bless you. If you get the money, you be blessed you. I'm a nobody holy, no apostle. Nobody go rest you. I tell begin you. Nobody go rest you. Nobody go rest you. Your tongue go confess you. Your head go correct you. You know go forget you. So you get the concept. They go tell you watch out when you go. Watch out on the road. Watch out for them hyenas. Watch out when you go. Watch out on the road. Watch out. Look around and all the places you go to. Stand your ground and stay solid like Ogun. Watch your back and just do what you're supposed to. Take care of family and people you're close to. Then they're passing. You go down your own lesson. Everybody keep on searching for miraculous blessing. Go back on the dust you. If you don't know yourself, you go lost you. If you get the money, you be blessed you. I'm a nobody holy, no apostle. Nobody go rest you. Father begin. Nobody go rest you. Nobody go rest you. Your tongue go confess you. Your head go correct you. You know go forget you. So you get the concept. Watch out when you go. Watch out when you go. Watch out for them hyenas. Watch out when you go. Watch out when you go. Watch out. Go tell you watch out when you go. Watch out when you go. Watch out for them hyenas. Watch out when you go. Watch out when you go. Watch out.
DJ Andre, the addiction, taking you back to the good old days.
Now watch me whip and take a piss on this rap bag from the clap. Got a nigga and the cash in the man.
Kikamba Mwaito Nasko sure za tele track ina sound Kikwaito Make sure unafanya nini?
Check what's in. You ready, Mago?
Katahio is who?
Nonini mgege true Nonini.
Maze Nonini. The other day, I had Otongolo time.
Poxy pressure. And
I said I was talking to someone, one of my young nephews, and I was like, there used to be a legend in Kenyan music called Poxy Pressure, and he did a track called Otongolo Time, and they have absolutely no idea. He's like, who? I'm like, these young cats, they actually think Kenyan music began with Calligraph Jones.
No. Ethic. Because they started a new wave of Kenyan music. That's what happened. You see, when you start a new wave, it becomes the in thing, it becomes a thing, it becomes the only thing. Anything before that, anything comes after that was just a mere implication of or duplication of what they produced, what they released at the time, because they became the thing. They actually just became the thing. That was it. I don't blame them one bit because us guys grew up with your Lost Boys, your Dr. Dre, your Snoop Dogg, and because of our parents' influence, we got to enjoy and still appreciate Kool and the Gang. The list is endless. Whitney Houston was timeless from then to date.
Yep.
We got to experience their thing. We experienced our thing. Our kids will have to experience our thing, and it's upon us as parents. Yes, parents.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a dad.
Totally.
It's upon us as parents to introduce and at least educate them a bit on the music. It's our responsibility. You don't expect them to take up the mantle by themselves. They don't have the privilege of having to go to school. I'm guessing they don't have the privilege of having to go to school and in Mathrees and Mathrees having radios taped on top.
The culture.
You get. That was a culture that we experienced and we loved and we knew. If I had the capability of doing it today, I would tape it on my dashboard. But the thieves in Nairobi are no joke as well. But yeah, it's upon us. It's our duty as parents to educate them on our heritage of music, and if we can, our parents' heritage. And only then will we achieve an epitome of musical balance in the house. Because right now, I mean, with everyone having music on their fingertips, on their phones and everything. Back in the day, it was either you listen to what your dad is listening to or you don't listen to music. You have to wait for him to leave. Your mom was a bit indifferent about what you listen to because if she didn't listen to that, there's going to be war. You know? So,
but
yeah.
I have to say, even on the flip side, that this generation, I'm envious of this generation because, like you said, we grew up with the Kool and Gangs, we grew up with a lot of international and American music, which wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But it formed our identity as is. Yes, we think globally. Yes, we are a society which is not really locked in, like, say, Tanzania, not very, we're not in socialism time, so to speak. We're more exposed. But at the same time, I'm envious of this young generation because they are deeply rooted in their African culture that they're creating, in their African music, which is being celebrated across the Burna Boys, people from as far as Morocco. Marrakesh is producing music and movies and all these things. And it's an African way of basically just handing the baton and, of course, the story to the next generation through music and film and storytelling. Are we first of all, just in a bit, are we losing this? Are we in a place where we might lose this because of the world becoming a global village, so to speak?
Not quite. I don't think so. I wouldn't support that statement. Not today, not ever. There are a lot of dynamics that have changed over the years. I must say that the resources that were available to us while we were growing up have dynamically expanded probably 1,000-fold with the current generation. You get, we had to just simply, like musically speaking, we were exposed to all of international content because at that time that was all that was being stocked in the record stores, and we had a handful of Kenyan artists producing music. And it was Daudi Kabaka, it was the Mighty Cavaliers, it was Shalamwana, it was just those. And if you weren't exposed to that, if you didn't like it, I mean, that's the only Kenyan music we had produced at the time. Yes, we'd have a couple of underground artists here and there, but they never got to see the light of day other than an exhibition on what was it called, Mizizi on KBC, or Utna once in a while would feature a Kenyan song, you get. But for them now, they have everything ranging from Spotify, Apple Music and everything. We really can't expect them to grasp that we have to buy Kenyan music. Like, are you serious? I have to listen to Kenyan music, as in, it's my head. This is not my heritage. I was born listening to grime music. I want to flip guys. I want to do things that I see on music videos, and they've been born into a culture where we see every day in the news, we are borrowing loans from the States, we are borrowing this from, we've started dressing up like we see on Instagram, we see our local celebrities dressing up as women and actually posting it and being proud of it, getting a lot of views. So the dynamics have changed a lot from then to now. And it's just the borrowing that we keep on borrowing to emulate, to stay current, to remain in the current times, or to be a step ahead of the people behind us. You get it?
True.
I don't know what Renee has to say about that.
I think it served us well to a point, and didn't serve us well as well, because I know of a lot of artists, and this is just me segueing and changing tact. A lot of artists who have been shown. I keep on telling you guys, the biggest fear is for me to appear on Waliovuma when I'm 60 and telling my story of how I used to be, and now I'm just somewhere where asking the government to help me, or people going to Twitter and say, how is this legend living? Because we've seen that numerous times over and over again on TV.
Yeah.
And has created, when you look deeper in that particular generation, they had no idea about how to deal with mental health. Imagine you being an artist receiving 2 shillings or 50 cents for whatever your performance is, or releasing a track, never knowing where it's going to be released, distributed around the world, and you don't have a cent. You end up having a roster of fantastic songs, of fantastic movies, and you don't know how you're surviving from day to day. And then you become a legend in the society. We've seen the Daudi Kabakas, we've seen the Kondes, we've seen everyone, even in football. How do we start talking about mental health when we don't recognize that a big proportion of our society has gone through it and they didn't understand, is going through it and they're not accepting? And we cannot change if we don't understand where we are. Ngamau, what do you think?
Two things. Number one, what Andre was saying about music, and also what you were saying about music and about African music. I think it's always important to have a perspective that is wider than the immediate, your immediate environment. Remember that the majority of Kenyans are not, and the majority of young Kenyans, yes, are consuming music from outside, but also have a lot of local influence. And that music isn't just what we're playing on air, it's also what's happening on the ground. And as we know, very often, kwa ground vitu is very different. I think that, and we talked about this, I think, years ago. In fact, the three of us, exactly as we were, talking about creating our own radio, our own recording studios, and our own music distribution companies. And this, again, for me, this period is a period when it's a blank slate. You can start anything all over again. Who are those musicians who have been playing, who can only record themselves on their phone and, send you a track? This is the time to start rethinking that. What is the role of DJs in music? If you look, the Ibiza DJs in Spain and in Europe and Florida DJs, and they build music. You know, they'll take a track and they'll turn it into something magnificent. And that's what is going to end up selling, you know, DJ Cassidy and all the rest of it. Yeah. So that's the place where, you know, Andre and all of those, and yourself, who are very musically talented, need to just step up, lean in, and play this game a different way. Then you've asked, of course, the question on the issue of mental health. We've got to approach these things, I think, as Africans with our own African solutions. We already had them in place, and there's some things which this period, because we're having to think local and act local. Very many of the solutions that have been coming from abroad and overseas are not solutions that work for us, or they do not work in the same way as they work for other people or other societies or even other communities. Simple example, Rwanda can quarantine because they have created a system where quarantine, literally not leaving your home, has got a social underpinning background that can allow them to do that. My friend, we cannot quarantine in most parts in Nairobi. We can't. It makes no sense to ask a family of 4 or 5 to remain in a room, or not to leave, especially to remain in a room when the bathroom is shared with 24 houses at the end of the corridor. So it doesn't make sense. So we've got to come up with our own solutions. And we've seen Senegal coming up with their own solutions very successfully. We've seen other countries. We've got to come up with solutions that work for us. What worked for us, even in the past? So mental health issues, of course, you know, and I'm not a mental health expert at all. My background is in law and in life coaching, and I'm not going to pretend to be one. But it occurs to me from observation, and I am happy to be corrected, that there are 2 areas in which, sort of ways in which mental health can show up. Either it is a stimulated situation, something has happened, some kind of external stress, or something's been introduced into the system that has skewed the balance, or it is something that is internal, perhaps inherited. It's a disease that has had this effect on you. But we always had responses to stress and to mental health issues. And perhaps it's time to marry what we already have as a society and what is only 2 generations behind us. So it's not very far for us to go and retrieve it from where it was before, to what is in the modern sphere and what works even in terms of drugs, et cetera, and to marry those 2 so that they work for us. When you mention people like, you know, musicians and storytellers and indeed artists and actors and all the rest of it, that today will be paid that 2 shillings and 49 cents for work that they've done, creativity that they poured, and then that music is taken and it's gone and it's abused to somebody else's benefit and not to the benefit of the artist. Well, the step back is, so what did we do in the past that enabled our artists to survive? And by the past, I don't mean in 1970, because we can see that model doesn't work. What are other people doing that supports their artists to be able to work and, in fact, to be able to thrive? Why is it that there are countries where if you're a musician, you can become a multi-billionaire, and others where you cannot survive off of it? Let's not do things differently. Stop reinventing the wheel. Pick the best of the practices that work and then create them here. Most people think that you've got to create something completely new. No, part of innovation, a huge part of innovation, even in the West, is taking what has already been done by another society, bringing it over, and then localizing it for yourself. Now, what is it that would work in this country for artists and for just about everyone who is in the intellectual property space, however you're creating, that would work for us? We've got a form of intellectual property that is completely unprotected. We don't think about the indigenous knowledge of people in terms of herbs, in terms of music, in terms of communal land settlement, that works very well in these countries. But now we have a legal framework that does not support that. How do we marry those 2? As I think it's Hilda who has just said on our timeline, hey, Hilda Wagare, paraphrasing C.S. Mutahi's very famous words, if we treat this new norm normally, it will treat us abnormally. If we, however, completely go outside of the way in which we think and dare ourselves to do things completely differently, break the mold, be who we are and be proud of it and work with what we've got here, we're on the cusp of creating greatness. In a sense, this is the let my people go moment. If we dare to take it on, if we can stop asking, how do we build more bricks with less straw? And we just decide, you know what? Now, sasa ni kuhama.
I'm liking that.
Then we can walk into a promised land. And a promised land is never a place where, yes, it might be flowing with milk and honey, but you've still got to dig, hey?
Indeed.
You've still got to smoke out that hive.
Indeed.
But we can walk into it. The first thing, though, as always, is over here. Mindset. Who are we thinking as? Because we've got to redefine everything about ourselves. You mentioned things like loans. Loans from countries where we do not know how we're paying back or whether we've got a base enough to pay back is the old kind of thinking. The new kind of thinking is look around. What is it that we have here, where we are? And how can we build that for us? However small and however humble. It's okay, but it'll be ours and nobody's knocking on our door to ask us for their money. That's the new kind of thinking. At least that's what I think.
Totally, absolutely spot on, and very encouraging in the African context, because we are waking up to the realization that, like you're saying, it has to be done from home. All the solutions have to come from home. We can't have the solutions that helped Europe. We can't have the solutions that are American, because they're totally different. And I think the world is waking up to the fact that if China is doing it and they're doing it their own way, so can we. WHO, because of the funding that has been cut by America, is looking to China, and now the Chinese, what is it called? The herbal sector in China is coming to the fore with traditional medicines, traditional herbs, traditional ways of healing. We have that, yet we do not utilize. In fact, that.
We tear it down. Madagascar made a pronouncement about a drug that it has, and we're tearing it down. But we're okay to get Chinese herbs.
Exactly.
That's it.
Totally. And we cut down the barks of trees and then send them to go to make medicine in other parts of the world. Yet we can do it here. Subject for another day. As I come up to past the hour, I know you have to leave us, and I just want, first of all, to appreciate you. Thank you for coming and doing this. Not only is it a pleasure always and a trip through education every time we sit down and talk, and fun times, but also more importantly, because I understand and I know as well, you've been through a tough time. So my heart always reaching out to you, because I usually tell people it was 5 or so years, but it was 5 or so years that made me grow up. It was 5 or so years that I learned how to be a man. I was a boy back then, and I have to say you helped me shape up. So thank you.
Oh, gently. You weren't a boy. You were. All that we did was sharpen each other, and I think iron. What's the saying? Iron sharpens iron, something like that. But I wanted to say this, and also to just saying thank you, and yes, I have been through a tough time. Those who know will know that. In fact, it's 28 days now. 28 days ago, we lost my mom, who succumbed to cancer, and it's very difficult to lose a parent. I remember walking with you, Makbul, through that journey with your father, and just how difficult it was. And but there's a number of things that I think I'd like to say and to celebrate at this point, because I know that very many people are in very difficult circumstances, taking care of loved ones who are living with chronic illnesses and not knowing what to do. And also that we are having losses through this pandemic. And it's very, very difficult in these times when you're having losses and when you cannot congregate to grieve together. And instead, you're apart and it's just a very difficult and very different period of time. But I was watching a kids movie. I think it's called The Book of Life. It's like a cartoonish kind of movie. And it's something about the Day of the Dead that they celebrate in Mexico and in parts of Central America.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you've watched it, hey? And there's a line there, or there's a bit where there's this character who is already in the land of the dead, but is fading because nobody remembers their name. And a line that struck me was, people die twice. First, when they leave their body, and the second time when nobody remembers their name. Whatever it is that you're doing today, however crazy it looks, whatever you're deciding to do, however insane it seems, do it. Do it because your name lives on in the minds and the hearts and the mouths of the people who say, do you remember Bully and his? Do you remember Andre and his? You know, do you remember Hilda and her? Do you remember Samuel and Adero and everyone else who's writing to us on their line? Whatever it is that you're thinking of doing, however crazy it is, do it because don't just do it for you. Now, do it that your name may live on. Because we live, and in our culture, we know this because we pour libations to our ancestors. You know, we name our children for our forefathers, so we know that our names live on. Let your name live with power, with meaning, and with some amount of craziness. Why on earth would you want to be normal in these times? So yes, we're celebrating my mom's life. And I'd love that even as we do, that you would do the things that truly celebrates your life. If I leave you with something today, it's don't be a victim of your life. Don't be a victim of your life. You're doing stuff because other people want to do it. Someone asked earlier about marriage and some wedding that was going on. For them, maybe it was important for them to do it. More power to them. If it makes sense to them, more power to them. Do what makes sense to you. Do it now, do it without apology, do it badly until you learn how to do it well. But you know what? Do it, because one day the book that is your life closes and there's nothing more that can be written in it on this plane. And all that's left is all that you did while you were alive. And does that sound a little bit morbid? Well, I think that's the perfect excuse to go absolutely bonkers in the minds of everyone else, because you're like, before I die, there's just one more thing I need to do. So yes, I've got to go now. I'm out, but please do follow me at Renee Ngamau, RENEENGAMAU. We're doing some work on Renaissance, especially about making your side hustle your main hustle. So if you're like, I'm done with this 9 to 5, I hated the job anyways, and they're about to give me redundancy, or I just need to supplement my income, this half pay nonsense is not working for me, or being at home without being paid, please jump into at Renee Ngamau and you'll see the links to make your side hustle your main hustle. Let's make some while going and changing the world.
Renee, thank you for making time and coming hanging out. This has been fantastic. I think we're going to be doing this at least, shall we do this at least monthly, once monthly?
Yeah, once a month sounds good. Once a month sounds very good.
Fantastic.
Andre!
Yay! I'm excited! I'm just keeping in my corner, just keeping quiet.
Awesome. Still continuing a bit. I'm with Andre is not over yet, and I want to send a special shout out to some guys who are watching, and I wanted to send a shout out to Renee as well. My mother is one of them, and she's heartfelt warm wishes to you, and my sister Thelma as well, who is watching, says a big what's up and a happy Mother's Day to all. So
thank you, and love right back, and love to everyone who's like tuned in today.
Oh my God.
Gual and Derowango and Oliver Wafula and Mike Siwa and Waiderero and Navon. I'm not going to be able to name everyone, but thank you for tuning in. We're just looking for Andrew Karundu now.
And we're back in business. We're back on the 19th floor. Fantastic. Thank you. Hashtag Amped with Andre every single Monday. Do tune in, tell a friend. It's been absolutely fantastic. Next week, we have another guest and, of course, another show with some good music. Uncopyrighted. Hey, this guy is a DJ. Finding uncopyrighted music.
It's a skill.
It's amazing.
We're Kenyans, we know how to steal.
Go ahead.
We're Kenyans, we know how to steal and borrow. We know.
Awesome. So one more time, happy Mother's Day. I know it was yesterday, it's belated again, to every single woman out there, our sisters, our daughters, our aunties, our mothers, our friends, our keepers. Thank you so very much, our spouses. We love you, we appreciate you every single day, and we try to do our best. Leaving you, of course, with Be Safe and Happy Birthday song. A lot of people have forgotten the Happy Birthday song while you're washing your hands. Can you wash your hands while you're singing Happy Birthday? Thank you very much.
Which Happy Birthday? By Diamond or by Stevie Wonder? The one for Diamond takes long.
Hold on. Before I leave, speaking of happy birthday, thank you for my birthday wishes.
Sorry.
Me, I'm not watching. I wasn't here. Siko. I was not here.
Java, post-COVID Java.
Oh man, this is so much fun. I'm having so many memories reminiscing just how many times we used to go to Java. I miss Java. God. Malindi Macchiato. It's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic day.
All right. Before we get back into the music for the next, give or take 21 minutes, happy birthday, Renee. Nimejitoa kwa noma Makbul. Happy birthday, Renee. Happy belated Mother's Day to you, my dear. You made it work. You still make it work. You've got a lot ahead of you. And I bow down to you. I respect you. I love you. Mwah. Sasawa. Makbul, find your own time to do that link. Find your own time, Makbul. I'm not giving you the chance. Yeah.
Sit back and let the music do its work for you today, courtesy of DJ Andre.
This is Nina Ogot with Electric DJs. Our very own Kenyan production. Nina Ogot, Electric DJs. Track is called Dwogdala.
Catch Andre on @AndreAddiction on Instagram and @AndreFlavor on Twitter. DJ Andre.
Baby girl, I always will.
About of this. Thank you for tuning in to Amsterdam Real Makbul and Renee today. It's been a lovely show. I bow out with one classic jam from the 254 Kajairo 360. Listen to this one. Throwback.
Show me young brother na makwaye pass. Kama azina jasho haujakatika. Basi ruka teremuka unipe 360. Kunja mifupa unipatie vipande. Nataka viuno ziende wadada. Nataka kiuno iende rapapa. Nataka kuona marwadada. Nataka kuziona zikitingika. Zikivunjika tutapatia daktari. Zikipeperuka hiyo basi ni urogi. Mambuyu mamandha wanakanyaga. Masupu vijana ebu kamata. Baby na mayaya. Baby ni yetu na
katika basi ruka teremka unipe 360